Awesome. Welcome to our fourth course today for the summit. It's objection handling your fee at your terms and your price. As we have been doing these Zoom calls, presentations, we like to have an engaged audience here, which we do have. Thankfully, everybody here is working hard. Today's class will cover the psychology of objection handling. We're going to go through some of the math that our fees look like when we reduce our fees. And at the end, we'll look at some of the common objection things that are thrown at us by sellers and some responses for those. You may or may not like some of those responses, and that's fine. You may think that you have other ones, and we'd love for you to share those with the group and the audience, because we all get better with the knowledge that we have here collectively with our 26 folks that are on the call. So we'll jump in with the first slide. So the psychology of objection handling, we're going to be on page 52 of our workbook. So if we can all go to 52. The red is, of course, the fill in the blanks. So when we were put in a situation, whether actually for sellers or for buyers, but primarily for the sellers here in this case, when we're put into objection handling situations, I always like to start with this, and it's on the bottom of the slide. It says a simple format: repeat, approve, and build. So it's the acronym is RAB. Always think of when you're looking or you're dealing with confrontation or a situation where it could be, there's creating some friction there. Always think of this RAB acronym: repeat the friction point, approve or agree with it, and then move forward with the solution and build something from there. So question number one would be agree with them. This puts you on the same side as your client and prospect. Start with thank you for asking the question, right? So don't be put on your heels or don't feel taken aback if they ask you a question. Expect the question, quite frankly. You're going in to take a listing, you're going in to get a buyer agency agreement signed. Expect to have pushback from that prospect. They're trying you on. They're seeing what kind of mettle you have. Are you somebody that's going to give up and walk away or capitulate easily? Well, that may not be the person that they're looking for to hire. Two, clarify their concern. And that's a question like, okay, so I understand what you were saying is, which is going to allow them to open up and provide a little bit more detail about their concern. Right? Because if we can't figure out exactly what it is, if this is something that in number three, we say isolate the issue. If they're conflating multiple situations and bundling multiple things together, well, we need to unpack those things. And so clarifying their concern and isolating it is a huge thing. So number three being isolate the issue, find out if they have more than one issue. So if they have more than one issue, it's almost impossible, quite frankly, to deal with that. But if you unbundle, unpack it, and deal with it specifically and directly, it's a lot easier. Number four, again, deal with one issue at a time. People have multiple things in their mind when they're here with us at the table trying to test you and figure out whether or not you're the person they want. So unbundle them and deal with one issue at a time. Number five, build agreement with them through these bridging questions. So that's the A in the RAB formula. Can I make a suggestion? Does that make sense? And by the way, does that make sense is one of my most favorite dialogues that I learned probably in 1993 or 94. Does that make sense? Kind of clarifies their position when you're trying to explain something to them. You can make a fortune just using that dialogue as well. Can I share something with you? And that could look like, sharing an experience of a past client. So if this person's trying to convince you to use this strategy that they've heard on HGTV or they heard on the internet or they read the newspaper, and so you've had experience where that's failed, you can say, can I share something with you and share a story where that has not been a successful thing? Can I tell you my concerns? And so again, on that front where they may be getting their news, their information from other sources that may be inaccurate. And quite frankly, there's a lot of inaccurate information out there. You're the professional, you're bringing your wealth of experience and your knowledge that we've helped provide and you've generated on your own. Can I tell you my concerns? Number six, finish every objection with simply, do you have any other questions? It's a finality, right? Because if there's something that's still percolating and hasn't been closed in their mind, that's not going to give them the peace of mind to move forward with you. So always with those objections, do you have any other questions? And you want to use a little bit of emotion and some acting when you're doing this. You don't want to be very robotic or anything like that when you're having these conversations. So it's very emotional. It's internal inside, and using this simple acronym: repeat, approve, build, agreement. It's the way that I used to conduct the objection handling dialogue. And like I said before, expect it. When you walk into the listing presentation or you walk into the buying presentation, expect to have objections that you're going to have to deal with. Because if you're not prepared, as we talked about before, half the battle's fought if you're prepared. So if you're prepared with those dialogues, you've internalized them, you made them part of who you are, it's that much easier to get through these objections. Our next slide. So it's essentially amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they cannot get it wrong. Big difference. So I use the analogy all the time of athletes and actors. They practice multiple hours more than they actually execute in their profession. So for instance, a hockey player will spend 2 to 3 hours practicing for every 1 hour of playing time. So we've said this before in the past classes, where if your listing presentation is going to be 1 hour, we should be practicing for that presentation 3 to 5 hours. If we're not, then we got to ask ourselves why. Maybe it's at that stage you've reached that stage where everything is internal, which is fantastic. But if it's not, let's go back to the basics and go, hey, I need to spend 3 to 5 hours for that 1 hour, because that 1 hour is going to generate a $15,000, $20,000 fee, which will also spin off recurring revenue through referrals and repeat business. So how many hours are you spending practicing your profession? You may want to just kind of jot a quick number down there. The number that comes quick to mind. Is it 5 hours a week? Is it 10 hours? And be honest. Don't try and think too long about that. Just put the first number that comes to your mind. And if it's 0, hey, look, we've discovered or uncovered a little bit of a gap here, an opportunity, let's call it, to improve upon what we're doing. So if that number is 1 hour, 2 hours, hey, good, no problem. There's no right or wrong answer here, as I've always said, but now we've got the opportunity to improve upon that. Internalization versus memorization. So internalizing the information, script or presentation, is knowing it so that it flows naturally from you. Your self-confidence, your natural instincts, and your behaviors are absolutely heightened whenever something is internalized. It's just, as I said before, it's like breathing. You're not even thinking about it. It just comes flowing naturally out of you. Whereas memorization, and we can all probably relate to the phone calls we get, even the ones that sneak through our do not call list, those calls that we get for people asking us for, duct cleaning services or lawn services or whatever services they're selling. And I'm sure we've had the experience where we know for a fact that person that's talking to us is reading from a book. So they're maybe attempting to memorize the content, they haven't internalized it. And so, as we said in our first class, think of the experience from that consumer's perspective. So you're the consumer getting that call at 8:30, interrupting you from watching TV, and you get that call. And if it was a good call, executed properly, maybe you're not upset. Maybe actually you're thinking, I might even call that person to come in. But if it's not executed well, which I would say most are not, it just aggravates you and puts you in the wrong frame of mind. So put yourself in those shoes. You're receiving the call. If you're the one outbounding that call, you want to make sure that the person receiving it is not put off by it. Because if they're put off by it, good luck building the rapport and booking the appointment on that one. The commission diagram. This is essentially just a generic diagram. This would be based upon, let's call it a 5% listing. We've just kind of imputed some generic, taxes, expenses. This is all going to look differently for each and every one of you, because of course we have folks that spend an inordinate amount of money in business expenses and marketing, and some don't, right? So this is just a kind of generic commission pie. I think we use this in our buyers presentations and seller presentation we provide to you. So essentially on the column on the right, the cooperating broker In a 5% fee situation, let's call it, they're getting 2.5%. So 50% of the fee flows to the cooperating broker. And so visually, if I had you here in the room, I would be showing you 4 loonies and 4 quarters. And this is what I used to bring often to the listing presentation, or it'd be 6 loonies back in the 6% days. And I would physically actually remove half of those coins and say, this is going to the realtor and brokerage that's going to sell your property. And so now we're dealing with what's left here for myself and for my brokerage. And then you can explain to them and show them, educate them as far as what those expenses look like, what those taxes. Now, I put a small little pie for taxes. I sadly would say that it's probably a lot bigger than that for us, but you know, I'm trying to help us here and maybe save a little bit on the taxes. But so with the extra two loonies and 2 quarters, I'm going to show them now what that looks like for what I'm going to retain as my net. And it's not going to be the $5 worth of coins. It's going to be maybe $1, or maybe it's 75 cents, or depending upon my expense model. But it's a nice visual that you can convey and communicate to them in an easy way that they can understand. And it really does work. I mean, you could think it's crazy, and that's fine. I agree. It does look crazy, sound crazy, but try it out. Try it out. Next time you're in person with somebody, maybe it's your spouse, your kids, just give it a shot and see what that looks like. And if it's something that you can, sink your teeth into, work on it, practice it for hours and hours until you can't get it wrong. It's a great way to just visualize things. And you always want to ask for your $5 back, by the way. Just you don't, leave it on the table. Little joke there. Next section here is going to be just about the why. So I want to cement this back in. We talk about this every class. Why are you doing this? Why are you leaving your home sometimes at 8 or 9 o'clock on a Sunday night, or you're getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you're driving up to Muskoka to show this cottage, or Niagara Falls, or like, there's so many things that we do, and you got to cement it back to the whys. Well, we've talked about, maybe it's to earn, an unlimited potential income. It's to be your own boss. It's to do all these great things. So you always got to connect back these whys, especially for these next 3 slides that we're going to look at, because this is where the money hits the road for you folks. This is where the real money, or lack thereof, impacts these businesses. And so now we're going to go into a mathematical investigation, or as I like to call it, a commission-ectomy, right? So, and we're going to kind of cut the head open here. We're going to dive deep into the brain and the mindset of what it looks like when we have a healthy business, a vulnerable business, and one that could be a terminal business. Now, this is based upon a 5% fee modeled system. And you'll see these numbers here. They go back about 12 years ago is when I created this slide. I've never updated them, but we could change these numbers for like 400,000. We can make that $1 million, of course, right now. But this tells you how old this slide is, because the last time the average sale price was 400,000 was probably 12 years ago. But nonetheless, let's look at a healthy business, which would be a 5% total fee business. Now, we can agree or disagree or argue that that's not a fee that's common anymore, and those conversations I'd love to have with you in person. But let's just agree that we're starting from a standpoint of 5% fee. So we're going to try and do 10 transactions at $400,000 at 2.5% to make that 100,000 if that's your goal, right? So I'm just keeping simple math. You guys can impute different numbers based upon what your plans look like, but I'm just trying to keep it simple for all of us, because I'm a simple person too. So 10 transactions, average sale price is 400,000 at 2.5% fee equals $100,000. So in that little pie that I showed you, one of those was your expenses. So we're going to say that our expenses, these are our business expenses. These are our board fees. These are our licensing fees. This is our car expenses. This is our gas. This is our marketing. All of these big expenses that we're going to pull, and we're going to say it's 35%. Again, I'm not here to say that that's the number for everyone here. Maybe it's 15% for you, or maybe it's 50% for me, but we're just going to say 35% as a baseline for everybody. So that's $35,000. So then we're brought down to 65,000. So we've taken 35 out. We've got 65,000 and we've got to pay our taxes. So I've thrown in another number. Now 32% might be less than what you're paying, might be more than what you're paying. You do the math in your certain situation, but in this one, we're going to call it 32%. So in a healthy business, you're going to pay about $20,000 or 21,000 close to in income tax to fund this great country of ours, which will leave you with, in this situation, a net income of $44,200. So I hope everybody followed that. It's a pretty simple slide. It gets a little bit more complicated in the next two, but again, you guys can bring in and input those numbers that best reflect your business. So if expenses in your system is 20%, your expenses will be $20,000. If your income tax is 25%, then it's 25% of the 80,000, which would be 70 something thousand, right? Your net income would be a lot higher. But using this format, we're going to go to the vulnerable business next. And the vulnerable business is a business where instead of 5% as the total fee, we're now at 4.5% for the total fee. Again, we're doing 10 transactions, again at $400,000, and now at 2% rather than 2.5%. And so what we have there is $80,000 in what we would call gross commission income. I hope everybody's following that. So that $80,000 of gross commission income using this 35% business expense metric, again, you could be lower, it could be higher, we're left with $52,000. Out of that 52,000, we're going to input 32% in income tax, which will be 16,640, which will leave us with a net income there of 35,360. And so if we look at the difference, it's about a $9,000 or a 20% drop in our previous scenario, right? So in the healthy business, we were netting, let me just go back there, 44,200. In this one, where we're becoming a bit vulnerable, we're now netting 35,360. And so what I've put there is there's a 20% reduction in income or a $9,000 loss of net profit. Huge. And what I've said there below that is you will need 3 more deals to equal a healthy business. And so when you think about it, most realtors and most folks would think that's not right. I only need 1 more deal at this $10,000 number to make that. But that's not how we're looking at it. We're looking at it from this net income number. Let's divide this 35,000 by 10 because you did 10 deals. That's $3,500 net income per deal. And we got to make up 9,000. So you're going to need around 3 extra deals to make up that difference. So I hope people understand that math, that kind of mindset, because if we think about it traditionally, which most realtors will in their mind's eye say, I only need to do 1 more deal to make up for this cut. In fact, it's not. In this scenario, you need 3 more deals to make up the difference. I hope everybody follows that. If you do have questions, I can answer them at the back end of the presentation. So now we go into a terminal business is what we'll call it. And this is a 4% listing. Now, again, we can argue whether that's a common number out there today. It's, the street rate, I don't know, but we're going to say 4% is a terminal business in my scenario. What does that look like? Well, that's a 4% total. You're getting, as the listing realtor, 1.5%. So we're doing 10 transactions at 1.5%. Our gross commission income in this scenario is $60,000. So it started at 100 in the healthy business. It became 80,000 in a vulnerable business. Now in a terminal business, if this is what your model's going to look like, you're now down to 60,000. So you've lost $40,000 in gross commission income. So let's take our 60,000, which is still, hey, that's pretty decent, right? That's probably a little more than the average Canadian earns as their base income, right? So out of that 60,000, we're going to use 35%. because we're going to keep it standard from each slide to the next. Again, you could be higher or lower. 35% represents $21,000 in business expenses. You're now left with $39,000, which you're now paying your income taxes on at 32%. Again, higher or lower, your specific business will look at that. That looks at $12,500 about. You're now left with a net income in this model of $26,520. So let's just quickly go back again to 35,000 and 44,000. So we've slid down the scale here, $17,700 in net income to you. This is a 40% drop in your income. Now, what happens psychologically often with us as realtors, we only look at it from the 0.5% in a commission or fee drop or 1% fee drop. We don't look at it in reality in the greater context of what it really means. 0.5% really means it's a 20% reduction in your fee. 1% is really a 40% reduction in your fee. Now, we're living in these COVID times, but let's forget about that for a second. Go back a couple of years. If you saw the local retail store where everything on their shelves was at 40% off, would you be a little concerned about that business? Now, businesses do, week to week in the normal world, offer sales, right? And, I see a 30-40% sale. I'm attracted to that. I want to go into the store, and, the store's job now is to sell me something that's at a retail price, right? But they use that as the lure to get me in the business. I don't walk into that business and see everything at 40% off. If I did, I might be a little bit concerned about the health, long-term longevity of that business. So what I'm trying to accomplish is just kind of seed in your mind what you're actually doing in your business by reducing your fee or setting targets in your fee long-term. Sustaining that long-term, you're going to have to increase the volume of your transactions to meet what we deal with in inflation in the country, right? So you're going to have to continually match that. Now, the values have increased, the numbers have increased. I get that metric does work, but imagine what that would look like if you're holding the line in your value-based business, right? Because we're conveying to you all the value that you do and how exceptional you are, how different you are from the competitors, and that comes at a price. Just like a Rolls Royce is more expensive than a Hyundai, right? Because there's value in that product. Now, in this model, as I said, it's a 40% reduction, not a 1% reduction. It's a 40% clip on your business. You need to do in this model 7 extra deals, not 1, not 2, 7 extra deals to get yourself back to the healthy business model. And how does that math work? Well, it's taking your 26,000, dividing that by 10, it's about $2,600, and looking at the 2,600 difference between 17,000 and 26, it's 7 more deals at the $2,600 to get back up to 44,000. So I hope that kind of math all kind of resonates there. But this model can be dropped even lower in our business because, of course, there's folks that do listings at, say, 3.5%, right? So now we're not even at 1%, we're at, or sorry, 1.5%, we're at 1%. Try the math in a slide after this class, what 1% looks like, and using these same figures and see how many more deals you'll need. I bet you're going to need probably 11 or 12 extra deals if that's how you're running the business. So hopefully this was helpful in kind of opening and exposing what happens mathematically when you reduce or take the business approach in your business to be a reduction or a commission cutting kind of realtor, right? So we're hoping that that's not what your business models are looking like. We want you guys to be successful. We want all of your whys to come true for you, right? Is it to make the unlimited income that you want? Is to buy that vacation property, to travel with your family, to fund your kids' education, whatever those whys were and are. These 3 slides are really at the heart and soul of how you get there quicker. Because if you're going to engage in the fee reduction game in business, and there's companies that's their model exclusively, then it's going to take you a little bit longer to attain that. So hopefully that was helpful. Some talking points. So these are some additional thoughts that I'd like to leave with you when we talk about reducing our fees. So I say, why 1% or 1.5%? Why not 0.25%? Why not $500? Why not maybe $1,000? Think back to that business planning course in your whys and that why you got into the business, because what you're doing, you're exchanging and trading your whys for that 1 hour, 2 hour presentation at the table, and you're giving it back to the seller or to the buyer. You're giving back your whys. You're letting your whys disappear. Business decisions are a fact of everyday life, folks. I understand this, and it's become more competitive. Listen, I started in real estate. I think the population at TREB at the time was around 13 to 15,000 realtors, something around there. It's a very low number. But I think we're around 60 to 65,000 people. I get it. Things have changed, but there's still people, most people, that are looking for value in their relationship with their realtor. And so how you convey that value, how you hold that line will differentiate yourself from the person that all they have when they walk in the door is, okay, I'll give you 1% off and 1.5% off. They're not there as the professional. And quite frankly, we'll go through some things here in some of the dialogues. You know, it's a weakness that we allow the profession to have, where people can do that. And I think that if you actually stand your ground, our profession just gets elevated that much more. I say here, never capitulate without a fight. So you should have in your back pocket, folks, 2 or 3 dialogues for every conceivable objection, commission cutting dialogue that they're going to throw at you. We're going to go through a number of these. Again, you may have your own, and if you like to share in your groups, please do. And if they're really cool ones, please share them with me. I'd love to hear dialogues, because I'll add them to my own repertoire. And these dialogues, I've learned them over the last 28 years, right? Most of these are not my own creation. These are things that I've heard and experienced and been taught over the years. So be prepared with objection handling dialogues. You have to be prepared. And here's the scenarios that we'll practice and just get them out. So how many of you gone to a listing presentation where the seller may have said in the conversation, another realtor said they would cut their commission? Now, I really would think that if any of us have gone out on a listing presentation, that we've had that question asked to us. Well, John or Mary said that they would do it for less. Okay, so here's 4 dialogues that you can now put into your internal memory banks to respond to that type of question. You may have a different one, and please share if you do. But let's go through them. So we're talking about a realtor who has already admitted that he or she does not even see value in themselves. Is that the realtor you want to represent yourself in the most valuable transaction in your life? So you want to have this come flowing out. That didn't come out as well as I'd like to have had that, right? But you want to establish, why is that person willing to throw that out there at the table so quickly? Number 2, this is the one that I used to use. Well, actually, I'll tell you what the first one I used to use, by the way, was no. No, is there any other questions? Just like that, folks. That was the first way I would answer. Another realtor said they would cut their commission. Would you? And I'd be like, no. Is there any other question? And I'm telling you, that simple dialogue will mitigate probably 70 to 80%, believe it or not, of those objections. Oh, what'll happen is the wife who may have asked it, or the husband who may have asked, will turn to their other spouse and say, see, I had to try. And then you move on to something else. I'm telling you, no is the easiest dialogue I could teach you in this course. No, did you have any other questions? And now you got to do it with emotion. You got to smile. You got to make it fun. If you come out, no, that's not going to be a positive outcome. No, did you have any other questions? Practice that. Call your phone and just say that simple word, no, did you have any other questions, and see how that feels. So then if that didn't work, this is where you now can engage in these other dialogues. Number 2 on the screen. If this realtor, and I love this one, this followed my number 1 all the time. If this realtor cannot even negotiate their fee, how likely do you think they will be able to negotiate the sale of your home? and just stop. Let that sink into the seller. Let them go, oh, you're right. And if it requires further conversation, look at, if they're throwing your money away, which is number 3, they're giving your money away, how quickly do you think they're going to give, if I'm giving my money away, sorry, how quickly do you think I'm going to give away your money at the negotiating table? So it's no, number 2 here, they can negotiate their fee. How likely are they going to negotiate yours? Followed by, hey, if I'm going to give my money away, I'm probably going to give your money away too, right? And you want to say that and embellish it, be emotional with that, because guess what? That's logical and that's reasonable. Then a normal human being is going to resonate with those 3 things. Absolutely 100% resonate with those 3 things. Because you know what? They can put themselves now visually in those shoes. Like, yeah, you're right. I was at the table and all I did was ask him, would you cut my fee? And Mike said, yeah, I'll give you 1% off. Yeah, that was pretty easy. If Mike was so easy to give you 1%, they're going to probably throw away $20,000 or $15,000 of your value, of your equity in your home. Think about that, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Number 4, I could line up lots of realtors who would do it for less. However, you have to ask, what is it you're really getting? Are you hiring somebody who would just list your home? Or would you like somebody to hire somebody like me that sells your home? And I'm going to use my powerful full service marketing that we've gone through. And by the way, as I shared with you last week, my fee dialogues and discussions happen after the listing presentation. They don't happen before, and they certainly do not happen on the phone when I'm booking the appointment. I want to table these conversations to the end, because when I said I would say no, did you have any other questions? They've already been prepped. I've set the table of what I'm going to do for them. So when I say no with a laugh, it's like, yeah, I get it, because what Mike's bringing to the equation is way more than anybody else we've talked to, okay? Next question. Will you cut your commission if I buy with you? Now, I've only put 1 up here. There's a whole bunch of them. I challenge you guys to think of some that you can, in your groups, discuss with each other. But I'm telling you, if they're going to be selling and they're buying with you, they're going to ask this question all the time. You know what? I understand that thought, and I want to be upfront with you and say no. So again, we're saying no. There's several reasons for this, including my regulatory and legal risks inherent to representing you both transactions. So this is kind of the heavy hammer one. I don't really enjoy this one too much. You're going to want to devise one that's a little bit less. If you are entertaining, however, and I don't recommend it, but if you're going to entertain reducing your fee because they're buying with you, please listen to this very clearly. Do not do it on the listing side, folks. Build it into the purchase side. So don't take the fee cut or the fee reduction on your listing agreement, because they may not buy. You may get them in a buyer representation agreement, yes. You may go out and show them properties, yes, but they may not buy. Oftentimes I've heard stories, and I've experienced them myself, where they decided to go rent something. So we were front-ending this discount because they were going to buy with us, where we front-ended the discount in the listing for them to go and rent somewhere else or go buy somewhere outside of our buyer representation agreements parameters. So maybe it's a different geographical location, maybe it's a different type of property, what have you. So when this dialogue or this objection comes up, just remember this. If you're going to do it, and I'm not telling you to not or don't, I'd encourage you not, but if you're going to do it, please, please, please build it into the purchase. So if you're going to reduce your fee by 1%, and it's let's say it's a $1 million house, it's 2.5% would be 25,000. 1.5% is what, 15,000. So guess what, Mr. Seller? Okay, you know what? I feel like I like to help you. So what we're talking about essentially is $15,000, and we're going to go out. We're going to buy. You're telling me a $1.3 million house. So what we'll do is we'll build in the 1% on the purchase, if you want, of the 1.3. So it's giving them a little bit of an incentive, a little bit more money, quite frankly, to say, okay, now it's 100% secured it on your buying side if you're going to do it. Now, folks, in my business, I very, very, very rarely did that. Sometimes I did, but very rarely would I ever do that. Discounting my fee was getting in the way of my whys. And I always had my whys front and center in my mind so that I would not be outsold by a seller or buyer into allowing me to reduce my fee. Because that's really what's happening, folks. If you think about it from a belly to belly situation, the seller has outsold you on why or what your value is in your fees. Think about that for a second. He's told you why you're not worth what you're worth. You haven't told him or her what you're worth and fought for it and not capitulated. Big difference, right? Next one. If it sells quickly, will you cut your commission? Well, if you were selling real estate in January, February, and March, we weren't talking days, we were talking sometimes minutes and hours we were selling properties, right? So this is a common question that we probably were hearing January, February, March. Right now, our market is starting to consolidate a bit. So, we're not maybe selling with 10 multiple offers. Now we're, maybe not even selling on the offer date. So if it sells quickly, will you cut your commission? So these were a couple of dialogues that I used to use in that scenario. So number one, so if I do a really poor job and take longer to sell your house, did you want to pay me more? So you do it in a nice, comical, fun way, right? So the analogy there is, hey, if I do my job, if I get it to market, if I can sell this thing in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, which is where the most activity and interest is going to occur. So if I check those boxes off, you want me to reduce my fee. Okay, that doesn't make sense, because if I don't do that job, if I take 3 or 4 months to sell your house, what you're saying then is you'd like to pay me a little bit more for that, right? So it's kind of a comical way to address the you sell it quickly kind of analogy. Number two, in this business, you get paid for results. The sooner I get the results you want, the better I've done my job with the least inconvenience to you. It would make more sense to bonus me for a quick sale, wouldn't it? Right? Again, internalize these dialogues, make them fun. Don't make them these battle acrimonious things, right? In martial arts, the worst thing you can do is stand in front of your opponent and let him hit you and strike you straight on. And I took martial arts, I took Taekwondo. I would never stand in front of my opponent and go, okay, just hit me. I'm trying to avoid it. I'm trying to slip the punches, the kicks. And this is what you're doing. You're actually trying to parry those types of objections they're throwing at you. And these questions will be presented to you 100% of the time at a listing presentation. I guarantee you might not get all these questions, but you're going to get 1 or 2 of them guaranteed. Number 3, if time is the problem, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we reject the offer and wait for another one. No problem. If we get an offer the first night, we don't have to accept it. We can wait a week or 2 or 3 or 4, or whatever you like. And if you're okay with having people coming through the house for the next 4 weeks, we could do that too. That's no problem. So if time's the problem, we'll just reject the first offer, first couple offers, and we'll wait for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. That makes sense? Doesn't make sense, folks, right? Next question. Will you unbundle your fees? So this is a big one that hit our industry, call it 10, 12 years ago, with these a la carte type of brokerages, which, because of competition, we welcome these different business models. And so these are the ones that say, pay me a certain fee just to put me on MLS, or pay me a certain fee just to market your property, in a internet virtual office website, a VOW type of thing. So this is where the unbundling service question comes on. Now, we are a full service brokerage, as we all know, and so we do not unbundle our fees. We do provide full service. We hope you charge full fees for that full service. So thank you for asking, but our brokerage is a full service and full fee real estate company that does not engage in mere listing services. We instead are hired by you to make sure you're protected and represented through the entire process, right? Because some of those mere listings, all they do is they do put them on Trev, right? And then you contact directly the seller, right? We're not that model. And every one of us that's on this call knows that, right? So if you're asked about that, that's how you address that scenario. Obviously, the consumer is going to pick what's in their best interest. One of our jobs is to show them what's in their best interest with all the value that you bring to the equation. Next, if you double end it, will you cut your commission? Again, I think this question is probably asked in 25 to 30% of the scenarios, because a lot of buyers today, the psychology from a buyer perspective, I've noticed anyways in the last 6, 7, 8 years, is to go directly to the listing brokerage and hoping to generate, a deal or a benefit to themselves, right? So I would welcome the opportunity to represent both you and a prospective buyer for your property. However, in order to do it successfully, I'm required to take no less due diligence for you. Additionally, I also must ensure the same for the buyer, thereby expanding my own fiduciary responsibility, my legal and regulatory liability for this transaction. So unfortunately, I'm not able to reduce my fee in a double-ended situation. So it's a dialogue like that. Now, I leave it up to you. There's different nuances when it comes to now, double ending is not a technical term. This is kind of an industry slang term. It's really called multiple representation if we have a client for both buyer and seller, or it's a client relationship with the listing and maybe customer service with the buyer, if that's what we're doing with the buyer. So, we're using just industry lingo here in double ending, but we do have to distinguish what is our relationship, quite frankly, in this scenario. Is it a multiple rep? And just as a aside, in multiple representation, where we represent both the seller and the buyer, we can't do a couple of things. We cannot tell either party the motivation for them selling or buying. So we have to maintain that strict confidentiality. We also cannot disclose what price the seller would accept and or what price the buyer would offer, right? So maintain those two things, and you sit on that razor's edge, and you'll keep yourself out of RICO jail. So never disclose the motivation for either party selling if you represent both in a client relationship, and never disclose the price one would accept and or offer. Hopefully that makes sense. Next one here. Will you, oh, where are we going here? Right there. I am in a bad way. Can you help me out? This is a situation where we may, in a number of years, depending upon the amount of debt people are taking on, if they do put themselves into situations on a debt, you may hear this. Or right now, because of the COVID-19 reality, there may be a health issue. There may have been, sadly, somebody passed away. And so there's these bad situations, bad way situations that people may find themselves in. So as I said, the first thing, this is a delicate and difficult situation to be in. And so, let me just start and say, let's find out what that is first, right? Let's identify what the bad way is. So if it's somebody that's, lost their spouse to a health thing, or they've, run into a mental problem or a financial problem, not of their doing, I understand. I have a big heart, and I've always helped people in that respect myself personally. I've made that as a personal business decision in my business. But we want to identify what is that bad way, because let's say it's a financial, a monetary problem, and the monetary problem emanates because of a death of the primary income earner. That's going to get my help, right? I'm going to help that person, versus the person that's used their home possibly as a personal ATM. Maybe they've decided to live beyond their means. Maybe they've gone and taken, vacations and bought cars and bought things on credit. Well, that bad way, I feel sorry for you and those habits that you've created for yourselves, but those have been your decisions, right? And so I'm now going to look at my whys for why I run my business, and I'm going to align those with what your situation, why you're in the situation you're in. And that's not my fault, not your fault as the realtor, for them putting themselves there. So you distinguish between the bad way, you identify, you define that from that perspective. I'll leave it in your hands how you want to deal with that. As I said, I've done a lot of help in the community where things like that have happened. Sometimes they're so tragic, and you just want to be there for as a human being for other people. Leave it up to you if you're ever put in that situation, what you would like to do. But again, just define what that bad way looks like. If they put themselves there, I don't have any pity for you, quite frankly. But if it's something that's out of your control, I'm there to help. Going forward, what do we got to do? Well, we got to practice our dialogues. Practice, drill, and rehearse. PDR. I think I shared with that acronym with you in the first course. PDR. Practice, drill, rehearse. Something I'd hope and encourage that you're doing every day. Internalize these types of dialogues. Role play in front of a mirror. I mean, it might look odd if somebody walks in while you're doing it, but who cares? Hopefully the person that walks in while you're doing it shares a laugh with you. Record yourself on your voicemail to see how you sound. I've shared that idea with you before. Pick a partner, right? We've got this great group now, 27, 28 folks here that are going to be a tight-knit group going forward. So pick somebody that you're comfortable with in these groups and practice together, right? It's a safe environment. Make your mistakes here. Don't make your mistakes or get yourself tied up at a kitchen table when there's a potential $15,000, $20,000 fee at stake. Do it here. We're all laugh and share a chuckle, right? Nobody's going to critique you to the point where they're going to make you, cry. Like we're here to help. Practice as often as you can. I think I shared a story with you of one of our top realtors who's been a chairman's club in the past. This fella every morning at 7:30 gets on a phone call Monday to Friday with 20 to 25 other realtors across North America. And for a half an hour every day, he practices dialogues in a role-playing environment where he one time is the consumer or client and other times he's the realtor. And these guys challenge each other every day, 5 days a week for a half an hour. That's the type of level that if you want to get to where that level is, you got to be playing at that kind of plateau. And I think that's it for the slides, folks. I hope this has seeded you and planted some kind of thoughts in your mind as what the consequences are here to you reducing your fee. They really do have a powerful magnitude impact on what you're doing and what you can obtain and what your end result goals is for those whys. So Matt, if we could turn off the recording, we